There you go. I think that works. Thanks to all the organizers. Thanks to Matthew, Heather, James, Rebecca. Thanks for all your work. It's a big lift, and we really appreciate being here. This will be a little different, and so I hope it's helpful. This is a modified version of a chapter from Materializing the Bible. If it's interesting, if you do find it helpful, let me know. I'll be happy to send you a copy. Collier Township is nestled in the Allegheny Plateau's rolling forested hills southwest of Pittsburgh. Its Parks and Recreation Department lists 11 public areas for outdoor leisure, including Neville Woods Bible Walk. Several sites in the region bear the Neville name, U.S. Revolutionary War commanders who settled nearby. But Bible Walk? The township website explains no history, just a mention in passing. Formerly known as the Bible Walk, trails on the Collier land now provide the perfect nature walk for area residents. All that survives in public view is a name without a story, a curious signifier emptied of reference. The story is one of ecstatic vision and legal dispute. In 1977, a lifelong Catholic and born-again charismatic named Bill Warren received, as he described it to me, a very strong prompting by the Holy Spirit to create a park in a forest filled with biblical statues. At the time, he did not understand what to do, but he and his wife Gail committed themselves to this vision. They found a fiberglass artisan in the Bronx and commissioned 105 figures. In 1979, they purchased 42 acres of undeveloped land in Collier. They clothed the figures in, quote, biblical dress and arranged them along an oval quarter-mile pathway, 30 scenes from the Garden of Eden to Jesus' resurrection. For Bill and Gail, Bible Walk was always a divinely anointed project. Remembering across 4 decades, he told me multiple miracle stories. In New York, a worker helping to craft the figures experienced a physical healing. In Pennsylvania, Bill was woken up at 5 a.m. by God and directed to leave that instant for the pathway and to bring his Bible. He arrived to find a Vietnam veteran crying his heart out. The man was suicidal and said that Bible Walk was the only place he could have a decent feeling about himself. They prayed together, and Bill led him through a born-again confession. Bill and Gail operated Bible Walk in Collier for nearly 2 years, though they never received the needed township permits. In 1981, the site was forced to close because local officials contended that the land was not zoned for tourism. Bill recalled the dispute in both secular and spiritual registers. He said that the owners of a golf club planned for nearby did not want tour buses coming and going, and they bribed local officials. But this was not mere greed. Written as an annotation on a scanned newspaper story that he mailed to me, Bill detailed his explanation. Quote, whenever someone has something to spiritually help the Lord's people, they can expect tremendous obstacles set up against it by Satan and his demons. While Bible Walk now exists only as a name with no story, the figures do remain. Bill donated a large portion to a friend in West Virginia who ran a friary, and in 1983, Bill donated the remaining 22 to a non-denominational charismatic pastor in Mansfield, Ohio, who was seeking to build a biblical wax museum. When the friary closed in the mid-'80s, Bill arranged for this set of figures to rejoin the others in Mansfield. In 1987, Bible Walk was born again, housed in a building adjacent to the Mansfield Church. The history of biblical tourism sites is in part a history of closure. Sites become non-extant for a host of reasons. Energetic founders die, legal challenges arise, property is vandalized or stolen, land is sold, finances become unsustainable. For some sites, whatever was there slowly deteriorates in place, an eroding remainder of a failed or concluded endeavor. The material for other sites become refuse, discarded and erased from existence, save what documentation might remain in photographs, film, or writing. Others are declared heritage objects, and the preservation of their materiality is legally ensured. Bible Walk tells a different story. The material items that existed in one place are relocated to a new place. Remaining is achieved through physical recontextualization. The story of Bible Walk and this range of material trajectories highlights something significant. All materiality has a dynamic tension between fixity and contingency. Objects endure until they don't, moving from physical existence to disappearance. Processes of endurance and erosion are an intersection of temporality, substance, and interagentiality, that is, exchanges shared with other actors in the world. I mean no existential or theological insight, but it is true that all things pass. The labor, technology, and infrastructure used to keep materiality intact, transform it, or destroy it always exist in tandem with the relative durability and ephemerality of things. This tension informs a range of questions in the study of material religion, from how sacralized objects are ritually disposed to the labor of memorialization. The tension of fixity and contingency also helps illuminate a great deal about the social and material life of biblical tourism sites. For example, it might help us think through practices of maintenance, from the necessary seasonal cultivation of biblical gardens to the computerized updating of digitized museum exhibitions. Today, I look to this tension to reflect on the ways in which material forms remain in circulation. The example of Bible Walk presents a case of physical recontextualization, of relocating materiality into a new context. Objects persist while the original location bears little to no trace of its ties to biblical tourism. If physical movement is one way to remain, then another is through aesthetic recontextualization. This shifts the focus from particular material objects to how a patterned material style remains in circulation through intertextual borrowing. To illustrate, we move between three Nazareths: an imagined biblical past, an outdoor living history museum in Israel, and a mimetic exhibition in Washington, D.C. The World of Jesus of Nazareth is a 7,000 square foot exhibit on the third floor of DC's Museum of the Bible. Nazareth is designed to be an immersive environment, a multi-sensory conjuring of quotidian scenes in a first century Galilean village. Painted wall murals visualize landscape and agrarian scenes. Individual areas branch off from a central corridor, a kitchen, construction area, mikveh, olive mill, and synagogue. The soundscape shifts from scene to scene: birdsong, sheep, goats, ironworking tools in action, and water droplets hitting the ritual bath. Actors portray first-century villagers, always in character as they greet you. Archaeological objects in several areas are enclosed by glass panes, but most of the exhibit consists of hard plastic fabrications. Handcrafted stones, olive trees, foods, and technologies constitute much of the scenery. Visitors are encouraged to touch, but not climb. Ethereal lighting bathes the entire area, rotating among shades of amethyst, marigold, and rose to mimic atmospheres of dawn, midday, and dusk. Nazareth was designed and produced by Jonathan Martin Creative, an experiential design firm based near Nashville. Their production of the exhibit emerged from a diverse intertextual matrix: scriptural references, archaeological records of agrarian technology in the first century Levant, Holy Land representations from popular and evangelical culture, and the JMC creative director's Holy Land travels. The latter included an influential intertextual source, a themed attraction in Israel called Nazareth Village. Since opening in 2000, Nazareth Village has been a collaborative project between local Arab Protestants, primarily North American-based Mennonite donors, advisors, and volunteers, and Christian archaeologists. From its inception, Nazareth Village has been a Protestant alternative to the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox structures that are prevalent throughout Israel-Palestine. Preferring an outdoor, scripturalized landscape over indoor ritual materiality reproduces a historically durable Protestant gaze, which values biblical nature over liturgical culture. A detailed guidebook, the Nazareth Jesus Knew, written by Joel Kaufman, one of the early Mennonite advisors, presents this experiential promise. Conjuring the everyday life world of Jesus is referenced twice and connected with nature, architecture, technology, and agrarian culture. This rural biblical past is sought amid a contemporary urban center of nearly 80,000 residents. The attraction is situated on an elevated rise, 500 meters from the densely packed Old City. In her ethnographic work, Lena Rose observes that tour guides routinely draw the attention of visitors toward the immediate materiality of olive trees and first-century replicas and away from the surrounding city. Nazareth Village draws together multiple authoritative sources, namely a location indexically tied to scripture and archaeological science. Several features on site were discovered through excavation and have been dated to antiquity: the agricultural terraces, the wine press, and some building cornerstones. Kaufman writes in his guidebook that, quote, Nazareth Village preserves the last remaining fields worked by Jesus' friends, family, and fellow villagers, enticing visitors that the land is not merely a generic scriptural location, but a direct scriptural witness. Describing the wine press, he makes the promise even more explicit. For visitors to the Holy Land who long to have their feet fall in the same imprints as Jesus's, they can do no better than here. Just outside the entrance to DC's Nazareth, there is a small dedication plaque on the wall. In memory of Joel Kaufman, we are thankful for the creative genius he brought to the Museum of the Bible. The same Mennonite advisor and guidebook author for Nazareth Village played an instrumental role in the museum's design process. Up until his unexpected death in 2015, Kaufman worked closely with Jonathan Martin Creative, using his experience in Israel to inform Nazareth. Kaufman, Martin, and other design leads for the museum spent several weeks touring the Holy Land in 2012. During this trip, they spent time at Nazareth Village, an especially formative experience for Martin. He took hundreds of photographs, which were used throughout the design process. In short, Nazareth Village is a key intertextual reference for DC's Nazareth, and the evangelical gaze that structures the former is aesthetically recontextualized at the latter. When the Museum of the Bible opened, it was touted in its own and others' publicity as one of the most technologically advanced museums in the world. According to its lead architectural firm, the museum uses 384 monitors, 93 projectors, 83 interactive elements, and 12 theaters to engage visitors' sensorial attention. With its interest in conjuring a first-century life world, Nazareth disrupts the otherwise enthusiastic wager on the immersive affordances of the digital. The art director told me that the design team's, quote, primary mandate was to produce a low-tech, high-touch environment. There was only one digital projection inside Nazareth, a 10-minute recording playing on a loop and projected onto a fabricated stone wall. The recording features an actor in first-century style dress reading parables from the New Testament Gospels. He stares directly into the camera, bringing visitors face-to-face with an auditory performance of scriptural stories. Spliced throughout each recording are clips of reenactments. This footage was all filmed at Nazareth Village, intensifying the intertextual bond. Gospel parables are an integral part of Nazareth Village. Guided tours are organized by 9 teachings, which they call the Parable Walk. One tour stop presents a sheep pen, which is used to materialize Jesus' parable of the Good Shepherd. Early in Kaufman's guidebook, he reflects on a fundamental aim. From the beginning, the purpose of Nazareth Village was to help religious pilgrims see the Nazareth Jesus knew and hear Jesus' words, especially the parables, with first-century ears. Later in the book, this takes on a critical edge. He argues that a materialized environment can counter false or misleading imagery inherited from European art. He presents the example of how an unnamed drawing from the Middle Ages represents the parable of the wheat and tares. The critique claims that details of the artwork are wrong, for example, the size and location of the agricultural field, which in turn has hermeneutic consequences. He writes, Jesus is not chastising his followers for being lazy, but encouraging patience and trust in God that in good time, the unwanted weeds will be separated from the spiritually fruitful wheat. In DC, the parable room is the first space visitors can move into, departing from the main pathway. If visitors take this spatial cue, then this room plays a framing role for the other displays. Apart from an inscribed scriptural verse when you first enter, the parable room also contains the first of 11 signs. References to ordinariness, work, home, simple, familiar, common, reflect and recreate the environment's organizing aesthetic, a quotidian first-century life world. Nazareth's art director emphasized that the exhibit is designed to be immersive. He explained that their ambition is to transport visitors away from the here and now of a 21st century museum to the there and then of a scriptural place where Jesus lived. One experiential strategy used throughout the space is the choreographed integration of sight and sound. Visitors see any number of scenes inside Nazareth: archaeological artifacts, fabricated olive trees, technology replicas, a digital projection of a man reading parables. But the visual form that occupies the most space is a series of wall-sized murals. All hand-painted by Jonathan Martin and based largely on his Nazareth Village photographs, they depict landscapes and agrarian activities. All are painted two-dimensionally, engendering the illusion of spatial distance inside a confined environment. Each mural is accompanied by a soundtrack emitting from speakers built into fabricated rocks nearby. Most of these sounds are nature recordings: sheep, goats, and a birdsong mix of species native to the Galilee. The emphasis on nature and cultivated nature uses the ideology of sensory indexicality to perform the organizing aesthetic of the Protestant gaze. Much like biblical gardens and biblical meals, Nazareth's choreography of auditory visuality mobilizes the senses to claim a direct, unmediated connection between humans and nature, undisturbed by time, history, or culture. The animating logic is that we are linked to biblical characters because the human sensorium and the natural world have not changed. Their natural world is our natural world. Their embodied experience is our embodied experience. While the life world of first century Nazareth may be distant to us in many ways, it remains accessible through the medium of nature. Intertextual performances always produce interpretive gaps, resulting from a necessarily imperfect fit between a text that has been decontextualized from its original setting and recontextualized. Minimizing and maximizing those gaps become agentive opportunities, hybrids of imagination and erasure. Minimizing a gap can be a way to construct fidelity to the original text context, and maximizing can be a way to claim virtuosic authority for the performer. In the case of Nazareth, intertextual gaps are filled in ways that gesture toward the figure of Jesus and that elaborate the exhibit's broader ambition of immersing visitors into an imagineered scriptural past. Wall signage is one technique for filling gaps, prompting visitors to attend to select features as teaching displays. For example, consider a plaque from the building technology area. The closing reference to a master builder is most operative. Visitors are called to draw Jesus into the scene, perhaps by recalling specific scriptural references to Jesus' trade, or perhaps other cultural references, such as Johnny Cash's 1970 cut, Jesus Was a Carpenter. The gap between materialized environment and imagined first century referent is filled more vividly by a series of actors who roam the exhibit as Jewish Nazarenes. Nazareth's art director confirmed that the design process, from its inception, assumed the presence of live actors. This impacted decisions about directing traffic flow and ensuring that the actors would have enough space to move and talk with visitors. Actors mark their identity as living history interpreters, not docents or guides, by greeting visitors in Aramaic before switching to English. They also rely heavily on spatial and pronominal deictics to mark their location in a different space-time, here in Nazareth, our village. The actors also draw visitors into their performance to bolster the play frame. For example, in a visitor recording from December 2017, an actor in the synagogue area begins his explanation with a description of Nazareth as a rural village. He asks if anyone else is from a small town. When a willing visitor volunteers a place name, he puts on a confused look and responds, "I'm sorry, I've not heard of this place. Is it near the Sea of Galilee?" Much like the signage, the actors find ways to bring Jesus into the scene. In the same visitor recording, the actor describes the synagogue as a village gathering place and the place where boys can learn Torah. He then asks the crowd if they have heard of a man named Jesus who, quote, learned and memorized the Torah here and with Joseph. The actors also reinforce the exhibit's quotidian aesthetic, emphasizing features of everyday life, such as food preparation. On my first visit to the museum, I recorded a performance by a female interpreter in the kitchen area. She explained the fabricated food items on the table and placed her hand on a jug. Right here, we have some water. So every morning before the sun comes up, my daughters and I go get water from the well. When we're going to the well, the jugs are light. When we are coming back, they are heavy. But it is the one time we get to see our friends, so it is our favorite time of the day. She seeks to minimize the intertextual gap by conjuring an imagined scene of first century life. In performances like this, actors build connections between everyday activities likely unfamiliar to visitors, gathering water from a community well, and sensations visitors can attach to, the physical struggle of hauling something heavy, the joy of conviviality, and the capacity of friendship to lighten difficult work. This paper has explored an animating tension in the study of material religion, the capacity of physical forms to be relatively fixed and relatively contingent. Lived religious practice, memory, and religious publicity all intersect with processes of material endurance and erosion. I presented two ways in which material forms remain in circulation: the physical recontextualization of materiality and the recontextualization of a particular aesthetic style. In the former, Bible walks, specific objects are preserved through new owners and a new spatial setting. In the latter, Nazareth's aesthetic is preserved through intertextual reference and the cultural production of an imagineered biblical past. Thanks.